Hi again. In Dwight Wilson's book, Armageddon Now, the chapter 8 is entitled From Sinful Alliance to Christian Realism. He's discussing at this point the rise of Russia in the imagination of evangelical writers in World War II and beyond. So we're dealing with the 1940s here. He says, Arno C. Gaebelein, in Our Hope magazine, compared Hitler and Stalin to, quote, one demon trying to cast out another, and claimed that he had pointed out that the two nations' destinies were linked. He chose not to recall for his readers that 2 years earlier he had reminded them of his prediction of a closer alliance of the two. He was quite perturbed about the mutual aid pact between Britain and Russia, recalling from biblical history that whenever Israel had allied with ungodly nations, she had gone down to defeat. After reiterating Russia's hell-inspired program, as he called it, he asked, can the church count on God's intervention and righteous help if they make common cause with the worst enemy throughout the entire history of the church? He later referred to this alliance as a sin. The Evangel magazine similarly questioned the pact. Can God answer a nation's prayers for a just peace when they stoop to an unholy alliance to attain that end? Russia was still considered the enemy of the church. The Prophetic Word magazine was cited by the Evangel for the news that after the German invasion, Russian churches and synagogues had been filled with worshippers praying for Russian victory, that 10,000 had filled the Russian Orthodox Cathedral in Moscow. This was ridiculed as obvious propaganda, and readers were told of other more significant news out of Moscow. A manifesto which said, quote, we mean to bring all the churches of the globe crashing in a gigantic sea of flames, end of quote. Pointing to the recent exile of 2 Christians in White Russia, the Evangel said that the friendly front Russia was putting on did not make her less anti-Christian. Further proof was later offered by Louis S. Bauman, who pointed out that all churches and synagogues had been closed in Poland, and by the Sunday School Times, which quoted Stalin's words to atheists in the newly annexed Baltic states, quote, the duty of the godless is to act without mercy against the church, which is and will remain the enemy of the Soviet Union. This then was the disposition of premillenarians when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor and they found their own United States an ally of the Soviet Union. With the exception of Louis S. Bauman's 1942 book, Russian Events in the Light of Bible Prophecy, there seems to have been little said concerning Russia in the early stages of this alliance. The argument from silence does not reveal whether this was due to premillenarians' patriotism, discretion, or fear of suppression. Possibly it was none of these, for in early 1943 the Evangel gave a hint that other concerns were crowding Russia out. Here's the quote from the Evangel magazine. In many cases, prophetic students have been so preoccupied with the revival of the Roman Empire that they have failed to accord proper importance to the role of Russia. Now that Tripoli has fallen and Mussolini's empire has all but passed away, interest is switching to Russia, for it now seems plain that the Red Army will have the decisive role in the defeat of Nazi Germany, and Russia may be the dominant factor in continental European affairs once the war is over. The only previous observation the Evangel had made was on the occasion of Hitler's setbacks in the winter of 1940-41, arousing new hopes of Russian victory that would in turn lead to a Northern Confederacy. Bauman's book, however, had been consistently critical of Russia, rehearsing the evil of the communists since the revolution. One of his themes is reflected in the title of Chapter 10. Any American or British alliance with Gog is abnormal. He cautiously blasted American foreign policy, arguing from a moral stance that martyrdom was preferable to compromise. Quote, the author does not want to be critical of the United States and Great Britain for accepting assistance from a beast in order to destroy a beast. Nevertheless, it is his conviction that it would be better for America to go down fighting a glorious fight to preserve the political and spiritual faiths of our fathers than to live and be so conscienceless as to wink at the crimes of Russia." End of quote. He predicted that the result of the war would be that atheistic Russia in victory would pose an enormous threat to religion in Europe, causing 10 nations to unify in a great revival of the Roman Empire to resist the great Northern Confederacy. Thus was the world shaping up for the great battles of the end. So ran Bauman's thesis, and his work was glowingly recommended to readers of the Sunday School Times. During the last couple of years of the war in Europe, the Evangel, too, became openly critical of the Russian ally. In May 1943, the observation was made, "There are many who believe that the final struggle of this age will find Russia and Germany arrayed together against the United States, Britain, and the Mediterranean powers. It may not be a popular thing to say at the present time, but it is not hard to envision such a possibility in either the near or the distant future." End of quote. Later that year, the Evangel cited Dan Gilbert in Worldwide Temple Evangelist magazine for the information that Russia was forming a Committee of Free Germany to provide German opportunity to become a junior partner in a Northern European confederacy. By February 1944, the roving reporter in the United Evangelical Action magazine was tossing off some flippant fatalism. Quote, "Joe Stalin is running true to form. He is letting the United Nations know in unmistakable terms that he purposes to manage Eastern Europe to suit himself. We had all better smile meekly and let him do it. He will anyway. By and by he will decide to run all of Europe and then the world. Let's hope for at least a decade of peace before he is ready. When it comes, the present conflict will resemble a Methodist love feast in comparison." End of quote. And in September 1944, there was speculation that Russia was about to open a consulate in Jerusalem. The Evangel took the opportunity to recollect that Russia's claim to be a protector of Palestine had led to the Crimean War, and declared that this renewed interest was significant. A couple months later, former ambassador to Russia, William C. Bullitt, predicted in Life magazine a war between the United States and Russia within 15 years. Also in 1944, a diatribe against Russia by Dan Gilbert appeared, entitled "The Red Terror and Bible Prophecy." He believed that Russia's battle against Germany was just a temporary diversion from Russia's true goal in Palestine. He declared that the war against Palestine had already begun with Russian persecution of the Jews. The objective was to desecrate the Holy Land and turn it into an anti-religious museum. He claimed that already 22 million Jewish and Christian believers had been killed by Russian communists in their battle against God. This then was the background that premillenarians brought to the situation that developed after World War II. It was not necessary for Russia to act belligerently. Her mere existence was sufficient provocation to the premillenarian mind, which expected a post-war invasion of Palestine leading to Armageddon. More about Armageddon and the scenario that arose in evangelical minds after World War II next time. I'll put in a link to the Watchtower's notion of Armageddon as detailed in their Aid to Bible Understanding book and elsewhere, plus the Revelation playlist, which is now, I think, many dozens of videos. And it started with an analysis of the Watchtower's history of interpretation of Revelation. So you might be interested in that playlist. I'll put a link to it as well as the Watchtower version of Armageddon on your screen. See you next time.